Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Couch Chat. I hope you guys had a wonderful, stress free, and productive week. I hope you found ways to take care of yourself and to enjoy life and be out there thriving and living out loud. As you know, this is Blue Couch Chat. I'm Shannon Leeson, your host. Blue Couch Chat was created as a safe place for survivors, caregivers, and anyone affected by colorectal cancer in any way to have a safe space to share, to find um, support, to find not to find resources, to find important information, just other people to reach out and ask questions, things like that. Things that I didn't have when I was diagnosed 12 years ago with stage 3C colon cancer at just 29. Social media wasn't what it is now, and I felt very alone. And 2 years after my diagnosis, I went to a conference in Miami, where I live, and I met some amazing people. One of those amazing people that I met is Mr. David Dubin, and he has an organization called AliveAndKickn, which I'm hoping he'll speak about tonight. He was instrumental in me knowing that I could be an advocate and use my voice and my story to help others. And that's what he did for me. He let me know that I'm not alone, that there are others like me, and that I can get through this. And not only can I survive, but I can survive. And I can be alive and literally kick cancer's butt. So this is a safe place to talk about your shit, because not everyone has a safe place, whether it's friends or family or whoever, to talk about and to express what they're going through, with their cancer diagnosis or the long-term effects of cancer. So I don't have that. So I created that for me and for all of you as well. So thank you for joining me live. And if you're hitting the replay, thank you for joining me and watching on that as well. Please like, comment, and share. I'd love to see you guys in the comments so I know who's watching and from where. And you can always ask questions. This is meant to be interactive, as well as have you guys connect via the comments and make new friends. So let's welcome my amazing, dapper friend, Dave, to the show. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Good to be here, girl. How are you?
I am great. I am always great when I get to see you or speak with you. It doesn't happen very often, but I'm working on that. I've been really bad at keeping in touch, but I am just so grateful for our friendship.
No, we're all busy, part of life. Part of the beauty of living with this for so long is you get caught up in minutia, but it's good to catch up whenever we can.
For sure.
So
For sure.
you didn't tell me I'm going to be making friends tonight. That's awesome because I need friends.
Oh, I'm sure you have more than enough friends. You are such an amazing person, and yeah.
Well, thank you. So now that put that on my my Yelp profile, someone who deserves friends. That way I get 4 out of 5 stars and maybe more friends.
You're a 10-star friend on a scale of 5. You have been
Is that
such a
flashing?
friend to me.
Awesome.
It, it's the truth. You have been such a great source of support for me, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you. And I don't think I'd be here sharing my story on the platform that I am if it wasn't for you, Dave. And that's why I have you on the show before I even share my story. I'm sharing all the people who got me here, and you're one of them. So thank you.
No, happy to do that and happy to be here and I've been doing this for a long time, so if my example is one that you can take something positive away from, then I'm doing my job.
For sure. I mean, you're here alive and kicking still. So
Alive and kicking still. Definitely beats the alternative.
it definitely does. It definitely does. So tell me, let's just tell me your story, up to diagnosis, with diagnosis, after where you're at now. Like, let's just shoot the breeze.
Sure. So do you want to go back to the time when I was with the dinosaurs and the earth cooled and no, not that far? Okay, let's talk about how about
As far back as you want.
uh, So, well, let's go back to the colon cancer part. How's that? We'll start there, and then we'll kind of play it by ear after that. So, my colon cancer story goes back to, for me, goes back to 1997 when I was 29. That age sound familiar to you? Hmm.
Does.
Yep. So I started having the what would be considered the traditional symptoms of someone with colorectal cancer. I started having blood in my stool. I started having a feeling of cramping, feeling I had to go to the bathroom all the time, and very little came out. As I would obviously learn, I had a blockage, and yeah, after a number of months of dealing with it, and trying to figure out what it was, because if you go back in time, back in 1997, HMOs had just started, and there was this term called the gatekeeper, and essentially primary care physician was designed to be the gatekeeper to going to a specialist. So they weren't exactly motivated to send you on to a gastroenterologist at age 29, regardless of the fact that you were having symptoms. Um, oh, and by the way, I had a whole family history of colorectal cancer on my chart. Okay, so I didn't. Anyway, we obviously I'm still here, so this all does have a happy ending, and I'll get to it. So I go to a gastroenterologist. I get diagnosed with colon cancer. Um, I get I go for a colon resection. So this was how I was first introduced to Mount Sinai Hospital on the Upper East Side, and sorry, Upper East Side of New York City, and it was a very interesting phenomenon where I mean, since we have time, I'll share the story. Is that I met a gentleman by the name of Saul Agus, who at the time wasn't, it wasn't old, but he was, getting on in years, a gastroenterologist. And he said to me something that I still remember to this day, which is, you're going to be around a long time. I'm going to introduce you to someone who you can essentially grow old with, which was pretty cool. And he introduced me to a gastroenterologist by the name of Blair Lewis, as he called him, a fresh pup out of Dartmouth. And yeah, Blair and I have been together since 1997. I mean, we'll fast forward briefly. He's taken care of me, my brother, and my kids, which we'll get to. Um, so it's the beginning of a beautiful relationship that no one ever expected, and obviously not too many will script. So I have my colon cancer resection at the time. Stage 3B. Again, we weren't talking about genetics yet, right? We're still talking before the internet had started. Al Gore hadn't invented it yet. They were still using candlelight to do the surgeries, and I get. um 5-FU as chemotherapy, which was a standard regimen. It wasn't too bad. I would go for treatment on a Friday. I would recover on Saturday. On Sunday, I typically would play soccer with my mates. Again, that's where the name AliveAndKickn comes in. I was a soccer player, and I stopped playing when I turned 50, which is obviously a few years ago. Um, but yeah, it was probably for the best. When I played soccer, the guys I played with had no sympathy for me whatsoever. They're like, if you're going to play, you're playing. If you're not playing, you're not playing. Either get on the pitch and play, or get off the pitch. I mean, I felt like I was licking sand. It's chemotherapy. Even at 29, it still has its toll
Right.
on you. And anyway, 6 months of that, I'm considered, fine, and we move on. I started having annual colonoscopies, no big deal. Um, I had one son, our oldest. Zach was a baby when I had my first cancer, so he's essentially known me as a survivor for his entire life. The other two came along after him. So uh, first colon cancer 97, annual colonoscopies. Fast forward two other kids. Fast forward to 10 years afterwards. It's now 2007, and where I am in North Jersey, you're allowed to become a blood donor after being 5 years cancer free. So I started becoming a blood donor once again. I'd always done that. I'm O positive, and I go to donate blood, and my iron count had dropped like a stone. I had no symptoms whatsoever, none, like literally none. I was still playing ball, still doing everything. Hadn't lost weight, hadn't done anything close to it. Um, it had been 13 months since a previously clear colonoscopy, and it turns out I had stage 2 colon cancer again.
Wow.
So, talk about being an overachiever. Um, so it's now 2007. We now have electricity. We now have the internet. We now have something called genetics. So along with being, having another colon resection, I did have genetic testing done, and it was turned out that I had something called Lynch syndrome. My mutation was in the MLH1 gene. And okay, what's this? Honestly, we
Yeah.
didn't know about it. I knew about the family history. So grandfather, father, my older brother as well, and we knew all about all these other things were happening. So there had to be something, but now we figured out what it was, and we learned about the statistics. And it turns out that Lynch syndrome actually, statistically, at the time in 2007, it was estimated that 1 in 500 Americans had a Lynch syndrome mutation, with again the majority, about 95%, not knowing about it. So we're like, okay, so then, well, what does this mean? Well, it means you go see an oncologist, you start having a plan, you start doing other things besides having annual colonoscopies. So I had CAT scans, chest, abdomen, and pelvis. I had cystoscopy. I started looking at my pancreas with an MRCP, other things. And ultimately, it turned into that I actually found a kidney tumor on my right kidney. Um, and it was very small, and I had surgery on it, and it's actually 15 years to this day that I had my kidney surgery. Um,
Wow, congrats.
yeah, I saw the picture of it. It's pretty cool. It was actually there was a picture of me going to Mardi Gras. I figured if I'm going to lose my kidney, I might as well enjoy myself. It was kind of like a last hurrah. And yeah, sure enough. So I same again, same surgeon, same hospital. Uh, Third one was free. The fourth one will not be. The and I had what would a partial nephrectomy on my right kidney. Only had 10% lost. I had no no side effects afterwards. Kind of went on my way. I actually coached a soccer game after being discharged, which was a bad idea because we lost and I practically fainted. So I'm not going to recommend that to the listeners, of
Right.
which there's probably two. And they probably turned it off once they realized it was me. But it was just kind of how it was. And yeah, that's kind of that was the cancer story up until 2009. Robin, my wife, and I essentially, since we were both, we've been in the medical field, healthcare field, pretty much since college, and we essentially looked at each other and said, we should be doing something for Lynch syndrome, which is why we started AliveAndKickn. Obviously the name comes from the soccer
Mhm.
love and still being alive as opposed to not being alive. And we started the foundation. We started 10 years ago, um, and we've had a real dramatic effect on the Lynch syndrome community because as of the most recent statistics, it's estimated that's no longer 1 in 500 Americans. It's now estimated that 1 in 279 Americans have a Lynch mutation, or and really, I mean, similar internationally, but you get my point. Um, and no, and so few people know about it. And it's so prevalent, and it's crazy.
It
If it was a
is.
saturated market, we would not be doing it. But we've focused solely on the Lynch syndrome market. We've really been focusing on patient stories, especially white male, because it does affect all ethnicities, all races, um, men and women, and we just need to get the word out. Yeah, so that's my cancer story. You and I met in Miami,
Right.
2013. I had the good fortune of being named Sapphire Visionary Award winner for 2013. It was a vote from colon cancer survivors as part of the colon cancer alliance, and yeah, that's where we met, and um, met a lot of good folks, and a lot of got of friends I met there that I've kept in touch with, and um, you know, just like you and me, we've been around long enough that we've seen People pass, which is not easy. Um,
Right.
you get used to it, and you never get used to it. It's the best way I can put it. It's part of life. But at the same time, I'm in my mid 50s now. Actually, mid 56. So I guess I'm above my mid 50s. And
You don't look it, so
you cut the tree open, you're going to see the
Right.
rings. Trust me, they're there. But to put everything in perspective, I've seen guys drop dead of heart attacks. Uh, so the fact that I could continue to play soccer until I turned 50, I mean, I could still do it now. It's just the recovery time is too hard. Um, uh, that's kind of the reason why we did this. I feel like, uh, am I setting? It's the only way I know how to set an example, and that's what we've been doing. And we did start our own podcast 4 years ago. Again, it's all Lynch syndrome related. Patients, geneticists, genetic counselors, MDs, GI, OBGYN, gynocs. Um, and I like to think we've had a real dramatic effect on the Lynch syndrome community.
Well, I do have to tell you, Dave, I don't know if you remember our first conversation when I first met you, but it was that whole connection of we were both diagnosed at 29, just that I came a few years after you.
I
But
think I had
when
food in my teeth, and you were pointing it out. I
I
think I
don't
still
remember
have that
that,
food in my teeth, actually.
but you 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 encouraged me to not be scared. You encouraged me to share my story as a young survivor. You encouraged me to go from surviving to thriving and possibly being an advocate. You encouraged me to be in Colon Club,
Hmm.
which helped me to find my voice for the first time. And even through our friendship, you've continuously encouraged me to try to find answers for what caused my illness, because my thing, there's nothing normal about me and we just don't know what it is yet. But
Right.
I'm still searching for answers. And I do want to ask you, because this is huge for the advocacy, the awareness, and the information part of my live stream, is can you go into detail about what Lynch is and why people need to get genetic testing done and
Sure.
biomarkers testing and the
So,
prevention also?
well, okay, yeah. So there's okay. I'll try and
All of it.
I'll do some compartmentalizing, and it's not a problem. So Lynch syndrome is four different mutations that make up the mismatch repair genes. So essentially, the best way to put it is your body is always breaking down and fixing itself. Right. That's how it works. Um, with Lynch syndrome, with the mismatch repair genes, something causes a part of your body to stop fixing itself, and depending on which mutation you may have, that'll determine the percentages of where that's going to take place. Typically, you have a much higher percentage uh, in the colorectal space, but really anything digestive. uh, for women, obviously, in the reproductive space, but also colorectal, and digestive, and then also men and women, urological, but not as much. So you can find a much higher prevalence colorectal, bladder, endometrial, and even like ovarian, liver, uh, prostate. The jury is out on breast cancer. Quite a few Lynch patients will develop breast cancer in their lifetime, but breast cancer is also so prevalent overall. So it's a question of whether it's incidental or not, or whatnot. But either way, I have had a mammogram a couple of times. It's one of those things that's not part of the guidelines, but my oncologist likes to make me squirm. Anyway, so that's really, um, having a Lynch mutation does not guarantee you will get cancer in your lifetime, which is one of the issues that we face, is trying to put things together. So um, nowadays we have electronic medical records, we have the internet, we have ways of communicating all over the place. Great. We didn't have those, probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So medical records a lot of times were freehand and scribble, if you will, and people didn't talk about cancer as much. So you would find that somebody would die of a stomach ache, right?
Right.
Could be anything. Could be cancer. Could be whatever. Or let's talk about specifically talking about Lynch. You know, um, Sometimes the family history isn't as straightforward as I described with my family. I had my
Right.
grandfather, my father, and me. That was easy. We all had, it was a perfect script. But you can have somebody who would have a parent who never got cancer.
Right.
Okay, so then you don't think about it, So but the grandfather, grandmother, whichever, may have had a different type of cancer. And again, you have anecdotal information, not a lot of stuff. So part of Lynch syndrome, or really any hereditary cancer, is trying to piece everything together and developing that family history. And the a number of years ago, I think it was the NIH or I forget which organization it was, but kind of unofficially declared Thanksgiving as Family Health History Day. Everyone's together, you're gathering around the table, you drink too much, you hit on your cousin. Oh yeah, let's talk about your family health history as well. So
Right.
that's when you're trying to have a dialogue about, uh, you know, uh, this cousin may have had that, this uncle, all these things. And then when you put them on paper, like a family tree type thing, you realize, huh, it all kind of ties together. And that's a lot of what takes place when it comes to Lynch syndrome. Um, did I answer the questions? I don't remember even what the questions were.
It did. So in terms of Lynch, you did talk about some of the screenings that you have to do, but what are
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
other annual screenings that you have to do with Lynch, both as a man and as a woman?
Got it. So men typically will be colonoscopy. It's question mark as to have it at one every year or every 2 years or even every 3 years, depending on the part of the world you're in. Um, Again, given my history, I'll be the first one to say I was 13 months between clear colonoscopies that developed stage two. I have had polyps removed during my annual colonoscopies. Is it every year? No. I prefer to keep it that way. Um, so I'll have an upper endoscopy every like 3 years as well. I'll have my pancreas looked at, an MRCP about every 3 years. Annually, again, going back to annually, I'll have a cystoscopy. So I go to my urologist every year. I'll have CTs, chest, abdomen, pelvis every couple of years. Um, and I do go to a dermatologist because do have the skin checked out because sebaceous carcinoma is also something that runs in a Lynch syndrome family. Females, uh, you know, endometrial biopsy, which is brutal. And otherwise there really is no screen per se, other than your annual visits to the OBGYN. Obviously, in the women with Lynch can opt for a hysterectomy with oophorectomy, but obviously you're talking about a whole lot of implications that come with that, ranging from hormone issues. Obviously, you have reproductive issues if trying to do any family planning. Um, but one thing as much as I alluded to, that it's not 100% guaranteed that you will get cancer in your lifetime if you have Lynch. Um, I have seen, and statistically, it is typically younger than most others. So I was 29. I'm male. Uh, my sons who have tested positive, they're getting their screening, now, and they're getting older. I have
Right.
seen women in their teens, and I think some of them who have had endometrial cancer before age 20.
Right.
So the short answer is knowing getting your genetic testing done is really is it creates your knowledge base. You test negative, like if you did not only two of my three kids tested positive, one is negative, which means theoretically as normal as a child I can make. His normal screening will be like a normal other person, 45 for a colonoscopy, Yeah, the usual stuff. Um, but the ones that are positive, the ones that they will get their screening they're getting the screening much earlier. Female, obviously, you have a lot to talk about, starting pretty much from age 18 and on.
right? Um, I know we've discussed this because at one point we thought that I was probably Lynch positive and I couldn't get genetic testing, and you were helping me to figure out how to do that. So I've done the genetic testing. I'm negative for Lynch, but because of the fact that I've never had a clean colonoscopy, I always have multiple polyps throughout my entire intestine from beginning to end. And in that first resection, they took out between 15 to 20 polyps. They lost count. So, and I've had endometrial polyps, I've had ovarian cysts. So, because of all of that, I have actually advocated for myself to be basically on a Lynch protocol, just because it could be something genetic that is similar. And I feel that it's better to do the screening and be safe than sorry, at least catch something early rather than wait until it becomes a problem. Because a lot of the cancers that Lynch positive patients or people are at risk of, those the benefit of knowing your family history and knowing your health history and knowing if you are Lynch positive is the fact that you can do these screenings. So although you can't necessarily prevent cancers other than the colon cancer, you can at least catch them early, right? And technically catching a cancer stage 0 is still prevention to me, right? Or even a stage 1. So I'm I'm really into sharing family history, and unfortunately, my family is one that literally does not talk about our shit. Like, I literally found out that I have 2 aunts who have had cancer or are currently fighting cancer just in January. Since sharing my story publicly, one of those aunts, before even saying that she had cancer, told me that my great-grandfather possibly had colon cancer. You know, my grandfather had pancreatic, his brother had stomach, um, some of his siblings had lung and breast. So, you know, that's an extensive family history. And then now knowing that 2 of my dad's half siblings, who he has in common with my grandfather, have had lung and multiple myeloma, I now have an extensive family history. And so now that I know that I really have to advocate for doing my screenings even more. So I'm really glad that you emphasize how important it is to share family history, and that the fact that sometimes things do skip a generation, but it doesn't mean that there isn't something there recessive that we need to be aware of. Um,
So
so I'm
my
yeah,
caveat would be, so when I say skip a generation, it means it if somebody does not inherit a mutation and it skips that
right,
generation, it cannot be passed along to the next one. That's one
right,
thing. If somebody has the mutation but doesn't get cancer,
right,
so that's a different terminology than skipping the generation. So,
right,
but I would say in your case, given the family history, um, I would have all of you get, including you, get another set of genetic testing because technology has changed. I don't know how many years it's been, but the rest of your family, if you all have the same, showing up with the same type of what would be maybe a variant of uncertain significance or something similar,
right.
you have a pattern that somebody can at least follow.
The issue is that I'm literally patient 0 and the only one who's interested in trying to find answers.
Oh, come on.
Say it louder, Dave. Say it louder. I'm hoping they're hearing.
All right.
So,
It happens all the time. It happens in Lynch families and otherwise, BRCA families. I mean, it's still an issue that requires addressing all the time. So I have no magic potion for you other than keep hammering away, girl.
yeah. And I also wanted to talk to you because you did mention that your sons have Lynch. And I remember
Mhm,
conversations that we had
mhm,
where you were sorry, like you did mention that your sons, 2 of them, 2 of the 3 have tested positive for Lynch. And
mhm,
I remember us having conversations about that, and I know that there are a lot of people who find out that they have genetic syndromes and they decide that they don't wanna have children out of fear of
mhm,
passing it on,
mhm.
or they feel guilty if their children test positive for whatever genetic syndrome they have. So, what advice would you have for somebody who's thinking either not having kids because of it or they feel guilty about passing it on to their children?
Well, first, I don't give advice. That's my first part. And if anyone wants my advice would be never give advice. So, that all being said, um, family planning is a very personal one. And I say this that again, my kids came along before I knew about what Lynch syndrome
Right.
was. I knew the whole family history, and it was something that it was not diagnosed, but we knew about what was going on, and Robin and I kind of went through it, and we decided to move forward with having the three boys, even before genetic testing. Nowadays, obviously, different conversation, knowing what the genetic syndrome exists. That's the first part. And then secondly, also knowing that you have options. So that's really the first part is knowing you have options. So there are options such as IVF if you would be interested in trying to make sure that the embryos that you are implanting are ones without Lynch syndrome. That's one thing, but in and of itself, that has its own set of implications, including financial and
Right.
emotional. So those are both very tough components that go into it. But then after that, it's really comes down to and I'll go back to my original conversation about setting an example. Again, at 56 years old, having had three, and this has been the way with my whole family. My father, my grandfather, all lived very long, productive lives, and my brothers, well, post cancer, and sometimes multiple cancers. I had
Right.
three, my father had three, my grandfather, you know. So we're all carriers for something. That's the best way to put it. The question is, what do you have, and do you know about it, and how will it affect you? So that's really what it is. It's a 50-50 chance of any child inheriting the mutations. But it's really, it comes down to you're really how you feel about it. Um, I have no regrets. I don't think most people have regrets about having their kids. It does kind of give me a bit of an irk when I hear people say, "If I had known I had Lynch before I had kids, I would have never have done it." And then, of course, the kid is standing there, and you're like, "Okay."
Right.
It doesn't take away any love between parent and child. It
Right.
creates a different level of information that they may or may not have had before. Um, that's the best way I can put it. Is that then fast forward to the future. Um, there are so many things taking place for okay, and I think you actually asked me a question about biomarkers, so I'll go this. The hallmark of Lynch syndrome is that we create cancers with microsatellite unstable high (MSI high) tumors. Okay, most people
Right.
like, what does that mean? Okay, MSI high happens to be a good thing nowadays. So most of us have heard about immunotherapy, and immunotherapy has been proven to work very well on MSI high cancers. So
Right.
um, I'm not s- I'm not saying I've seen miracles, but I've actually seen miracles where patients who did not know they had Lynch, did not know they had cancer until it turned stage 4. Turns out they had Lynch. Turns out it was MSI high. Turns out they went on immunotherapy. Turns out they were no evidence of disease in a matter of several treatments.
Right.
Doesn't take place all the time, but it's happening more often than any of us could have possibly imagined. It's kind of cool. So then,
Yeah.
so that's one component. Second component, vaccines are are already in phase 1 of clinical trials. A vaccine for Lynch syndrome. Seriously?
That's awesome.
I mean, do I think it'll be in my lifetime? I do. I certainly think it'll be in my kid's lifetime, obviously.
Yes.
So these are all taking place. So if again, having Lynch syndrome does not guarantee cancer. Having cancer, it by no means guarantees a death sentence. Um, you find things early, like anything, it's so much more treatable. And again, if you know you have the mutation and you're going for your screening, there's a high chance that you may get cancer, but it's also a very high chance you're going to find it very early, which is what you want.
Right.
And if I'm living proof of it, then so be it.
You are, and you epitomize AliveAndKickn. I mean, not just with soccer, but just in how you live and how you've faced everything. And, you know, I remember those conversations of you being concerned on, whether your kids had Lynch or not.
Mhm.
And you know what? Like, I might have something genetic. I'm not angry at my parents. They didn't know. And even if they did, I'm happy I'm alive,
Mhm.
And if I find out the answer for it, then I'm even more grateful because then I know what tools I need to fight whatever it is I have. So you're exactly right, in the non advice that you gave, in that, when we, at least if we know we have Lynch, we know what we're up against, we can be proactive about it, right?
Mhm.
If we know that we need to do certain screenings, then we do certain screenings. Like my girl, Shannon Costello, is here watching. I know you know her. Love you, Shannon. Love you, my twin. Um, she has Lynch and she does all of the things that she needs to do. And she has other, familial health issues that she deals with. And she's very proactive. And
Mhm.
so I want people to know that with Lynch, you know, she says hi. with
If I say
with
hi, will she hear me?
Yes, she's
Okay,
watching.
good. Then I said hi.
This is what I love about being live, right? We're interactive and we see who's watching and what they're getting from it. Like, I don't know if you saw Marley's comment. She said that you have such an inspirational story and she's 14 months NED and hopes to see decades. And she thanks you for sharing your story. And this is why we do what we do, right, Dave? Like, it's not about us. It's being able to give others hope and see that there are long-term survivors
Mhm.
who are diagnosed young and we're doing well. Because when we look on the internet, that's not what we're seeing. And at least when we were diagnosed, that's definitely not what we were seeing. We were seeing death, death, and more death and it wasn't, and then we weren't even represented. I mean, I know I wasn't represented as a young person back in social media in 2011. So I'm sure when you were diagnosed, I mean, social media wasn't even there. So I can't even
Hey,
imagine how alone you felt. I mean, social media was new. I mean,
we were still
you know,
using tin cans to talk to each other from across the house.
well, I mean, that would be a really great way of having community, though. You can talk to your next
It
door
would
neighbor
be.
and be like, hey, look, this is what's going on. Hey, you need to get a colonoscopy, I
Breaker,
just,
breaker, 1, 2, 1, 2.
right?
You don't even remember what CB radios are. Forget it.
I do.
No,
It
you
was
don't.
almost like the little walkie-talkies.
Yeah, it was in your car.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, we didn't have that. But I do remember my grandfather
Oh
having one
boy,
of
here
those
we go.
cell phones that came out with the
Ah,
box. It was like a suitcase with the thing,
yep.
and then he had the big Motorola brick. Yeah,
Hmm.
my grandfather was a pretty big techie for his
Can
age.
we
Like,
stop with the grandfather conversation?
my grandfather was just different. I love him. He knew how to
Thank
text
you.
on one of those like little Nokia phones where you have to press like 4 times to get an S. He knew how to text on that. I was amazed when I got my first text
That's
from him.
cool.
And he was like almost 90 and he was able to use his cell phone and text. I was like, man, I have a cool grandfather. And my
You
dad is
do.
just techie. Yeah,
Nice.
my dad is just as techie, just naturally. But
But you're right. The audience is I mean, back when we were first diagnosed, or you were
right.
first diagnosed, and I was first diagnosed with Lynch. Um, things like Facebook were just getting launched,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it was obviously a different world then, and it continues to become a different world pretty much
Right.
daily. But um, the amount of information that was on there was significantly less, but it was not. But it was still just as incomplete and in many cases incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is I remember my doctors literally looked at me and they're like, "You're 29 years old with stage 3 colon cancer. You're an oddball. You're a rare case." And my oncologist, he was like, "These are the statistics, but these don't
Mhm,
apply to you because you don't fit into these statistics. I don't know what to
mhm.
tell you." So, and that was just in 2011. That wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was long ago, but it wasn't that long ago. I mean, I'm 12 years
But they're
out,
being
but
honest.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm
Yeah.
glad. Because if I saw that 70 to 80%, like I just recently looked up my chance of recurrence 12 years later, and I'm like, man, I had a 70 to 80% chance of recurrence at stage 3C. And I'm like, man, I beat the odds. But it's also because I've insisted on doing an annual colonoscopy. And
Right.
if I hadn't done that, I would have had a new primary. So, and I did have a recurrent scare where they thought I was stage 4 at one point. I had spots on my liver. But,
Hmm.
I find, just like you said, doing screenings, being proactive, whether you have something genetic or not, it's important to keep up with your screenings as a survivor, and not just for the primary cancer that you had, but for all cancers, because you never know what else you might have, or maybe you have something genetic that's just not found yet.
Right.
So I'm really big on doing all screenings, because healthcare is self-care and we only get one life. And health, like we know, Dave, like you can feel healthy and then realize like you're dying inside and not even know. And so it's really important. And like my girl Shannon, I'm calling her out again because I know how tiring. I mean, survivorship is tiring,
Hmm.
especially when you're 12 years like me, and you still have to do the annual colonoscopy, the endometrial biopsy, the pap smear, the mammogram, like everything. But it's worth it, because at least I have that peace of mind where I know I'm doing everything that I can. And if there is anything, I'll catch it early. Or with the colonoscopy, it's removed as a polyp and I don't have to worry until the next year. So it's really important that we keep up on screenings, because I've also seen people without genetic syndromes or unknown who they fall back on their screenings because they're like, oh, I'm a long-term survivor, I'm good. And the doctor says they're good. And then they get a new cancer somewhere else, like what happened to you, and then they're gone. And then it's like, what was the point of all that fighting that we did if we don't stay up to date on our screenings to make sure that we stay healthy and alive? So that's something that I feel like sharing all the time, is because, I if I didn't go to a gyno onc instead of a regular gyno, I wouldn't have had that endometrial biopsy to realize that I had polyps. And then what could have happened?
Hmm.
Or with my ovarian cysts. So that's why I realized how big getting all of the screenings are. It's not just the one, and it's yes, it's tiring to keep, doing this, but I still see my oncologist every year. I was like, you're not firing me. At 10 years, he's like, I don't need to see you anymore. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Because I need to see you. And so, it's really big that we advocate for ourselves, which you've done. So, you know, um, what other information would you want to give about AliveAndKickn, what you do, where you're at now, where your kids are? Like oh my God, they must be grown men now. And how's Robin? And just how's life?
You're hitting me with a lot there.
I know. We have a lot to catch up on.
Where do we begin? No. So listen, I like to say it, and I really feel it. I mean, I've lived a blessed life. I mean, people hear the story and they sometimes think it's because of all the cancers that it's been difficult. Again, I look at it as a certain way that this is just a part of life, and
Mhm.
cancer statistically is a part of life, and as my high-risk oncologist will say, a whole lot more people pass away of cardiovascular issues than all cancers combined. So I like to think that I take care of myself, uh, regardless of my ice cream habit, which too bad. I'll burn it off on my Peloton. Um, and I have the fulfillment of being able to do what I do. Robin runs the foundation, so she's running AliveAndKickn on a full-time basis. We've really hit the stride over the last several years. I think one of the biggest components that we've done is the Living with Lynch annual patient advocacy ambassadorship workshops that we've done, where we've done in a number of cities now, where we've gotten together with in partnership with the Colon Cancer Coalition and Get Your Rear and Gear Race, we've gotten together like maybe a dozen Lynch syndrome patients and families. Sometimes they come with them. Some survivors, some previvors, which, if unfamiliar, the term previvor is someone who has a mutation. I don't know if it's an official term, but we use it anyway, where it's someone who has a mutation but has not had cancer yet. Doesn't guarantee they will, but they have not had cancer. My sons, and we get together with researchers from and clinicians from an institution. We've done it previously with MD Anderson, with the Ohio State, with Mass General. This past year was in Manhattan with folks from Cornell and Sloan Kettering. And we have these conversations, we have these dialogue with professionals and the patients together. We get some content, a lot of content on camera, and we really show how it is a equal opportunity, I guess you will, mutation, where it's not just, again, the white male who's developing this cancer and these mutations. It's obviously African Americans, Hispanic, male, female. I mean, and a number of different ages. It's just been really phenomenal, the response that we've gotten, and kind of like we've kind of modeled it after the Colon Club, which you and I have been in, where we got the advocates together for a very long weekend. That's how we've modeled it, and it's an application process. So it's nice to see how, from the first year you do it, where you're getting, only enough people to get the group together, and now the number of applications that are coming in has been phenomenal. And the stories are amazing, and the people that we meet are just amazing, and you become friends with them for life. And like anything, when you have a dozen people getting together to become advocates, there's going to be three or four that just go crazy and get out there and really tell a story and do all this, and then you're going to have three or four that go back to their previous lives and don't necessarily get involved after that. That's fine, and you got everything in between. But that's par for running a program like this, and it's really been, I think, beneficial for everybody involved, from the patient standpoint, our standpoint, and I think the professional standpoint has really appreciated it as well. Um, yeah, that's really been good. Oh, did I mention I have my own podcast?
No, you didn't. So
I
can
did,
you
but I'm saying it again. Just quizzing you. No, I mean
so
that's really for the past 4 years. I started a podcast during COVID, or as COVID was starting, I guess would be the best way to
right,
put it. And um, it wound up being that I stopped traveling for work, and I had the ability to record more, and other people had the ability to record. We're coming up on 150 guests now over the past 4 years and change, and again, it's all Lynch syndrome specific, but the patient stories. Um, Going back to the kids, one of my kids, the youngest one, said that one of the things he really appreciates about Robin and me is that we don't always talk about cancer. I mean, we
right,
talk about stuff. We talk about politics and sports and business and just stuff. So I kind of created the podcast around that format, where the common theme is Lynch syndrome. So whether it's a patient or an oncologist, whatever the case may be, they have a Lynch syndrome story, which we talk about, which is obviously very important. But then, kind of like what you and I are doing, where we just kind of talk, and they talk through what's going on in their lives, and some of the stuff is real heavy. Um,
right,
and I think that the audience appreciates it. I think they appreciate hearing that just because someone has Lynch syndrome or is involved with Lynch syndrome, it doesn't mean that's their entire life. Again, but some people, they go off the rails. We have a knee slapping good time, and some people really go into some really deep stuff, and I kind of listen and let them tell their story, because that's what you and I are here for.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, quick question, your
Mm.
website, is that AliveAndKickn.org?
Do you want to spell it?
It's the same as in your banner, correct?
There you go. Yes.
And
But
then
not
the
everyone
Alive
types it in that way.
Oh, and I did.
Okay.
And, your podcast, where can people find your podcast?
So it is on the Alive and Kickin' website, but it's also on your wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, and whatever.
Okay. So, I'm making you a little ad here.
You are.
Um, I am. So,
That's so
here we
cool.
go. So, there's the website, and you can find Alive and Kickin', the podcast, on the website and on all podcast platforms. Did I do that
Cool.
right?
Sure.
Okay,
I don't know.
so I'm gonna keep that going so people know where to find you and they can get the resources that they need. I do know a lot of I know a few people in Jamaica or from Jamaica who are now here who have Lynch, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. But when they're ready, they do know that you exist. And I
Hmm.
also have to say that I have seen the impact that you're making on the friends that I've met who have Lynch and the support that they found in your organization and from you personally, and Robin, because it's not just you don't just have an organization and you have people that you help. Like you personally, you and Robin care about these people who have Lynch, your fellow Lynchies. And I've also gone to medical conferences and met doctors and researchers, and I'm like, "Hey, you've done a paper on Lynch. Do you know Dave Dubin?" And they're like, "Oh, yes, I know him." And I'm like, "You know what? My friend is doing his work. I don't even have to go and be his marketing person. You're out there and you're doing it, and it makes me so happy and so proud to be your friend because I remember when you told me you were like, Shannon, when you want to go into advocacy, you need to find your niche. You need to find what's needed but not there, and you need to
Hmm.
fulfill it. And that advice that you say you never give advice, but that wise advice that you gave me is part of the reason why we're here tonight because this platform has been needed. There is no video. There's nobody doing a video live stream talking about the issues with colorectal cancer and affecting other populations. And yes, I am colorectal cancer focused, but with it comes the mental health, with it comes the suicide, with it comes the comorbidities like diabetes and
Hmm.
hypertension and heart disease that affect the same communities that are high risk of colorectal cancer. And so I took your advice, and this is why I had you on tonight, was because your advice is part of the reason why I'm here tonight doing this. And I wanted to share that with you and to thank you for it. That 12 years ago, as scared as I was listening and I heard, and that advice has stayed in my head for that long. So thank you.
It was very it was very understandable for you to be scared at that time. Um, and like I said, I've been there. I'm not going to say been there, done that. That's not the right way to put it. But I've stood in your shoes. I happen to have been there, 10 or so years before you, and I was still there. So again, if what I'm doing and the way I'm doing it makes for a good example, I'm happy to do that. I
It
will say
has
that. Well, listen, some people have accused me of being too happy. Like,
no.
I got nothing on that one. I really don't know where to go with this, but yeah, like I said, I've been blessed. So I can only apologize if it comes across that I'm too happy. It's all good.
You know what? For somebody who has not even been through who's been through what you've been through, but you've also been through other things as well, I can honestly say, Dave, as your friend, you can never be too happy. We fought for our lives and we earned the right to be happy. And everyone in this world is entitled to be happy. but we fought for this shit and we get to enjoy the shit that we fought for to the fullest. So if anybody tells you that, then they're absolutely wrong. And I will find them and I'll give them an alive and kick and kick in the pussy.
So here's a question for you.
Yes.
So, and
Toast in
this
the hot.
may be, well, I mean, how do I say this? I'll say this for me first, and then I'll ask you the question. Um, I never thought that any of my cancer disease, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it, was going to kill me. I never in my mind, I never thought of it as this was the end. I just thought of it as, okay, this was something that needed to be removed, and we move on. That's how I
Right.
approached it. Um, did you think the worst when you were going through this? Some 10 years ago.
It was 12 years as of October. Um,
But you get my point, though. Like,
I do.
back in the day.
I honestly, so I remember, mine was found during surgery. So I went into surgery thinking that I had some minor thing and I'd be out in 45 minutes, is what they told me. And then they opened me up and they found cancer. And at first it
Right.
was so bad, they thought I was stage 4. And then they downgraded me with pathology. So I found out that I had cancer a week after my surgery because my mom wanted them to wait until I was actually lucid from all
Okay.
the crap that I was being given for pain. And I remember when they said, "You have cancer," my thought was, well, at least now I know that I'm not freaking crazy after suffering for 12 years. And
Yeah.
then it was, at least now I know what I'm fighting, and I can figure out how to deal with it. And then the third thought was, oh God, this is going to be one heck of a fight. But I knew that me and God were going to fight it and that I would be okay either way. Um, I knew that there's always the possibility of death, but no, I never felt like I was going to get to that point because I knew I was going to fight as hard as I could for it to not get to that point, which is all we can do. But I was actually also okay if it went that way in some weird way. As
Mm,
scared as I was, I think I was more scared of the cancer and the treatments than actually dying at that point
mm,
because I had suffered for so long that it was like I had actually come to the point where there were days when I was like, God, just take me because I was
right.
tired of being in pain. But I always hoped for the best and prepared for the worst. And I think that's how we always have to look at life and just ride the waves, whether it's up or down. We just have to ride it and go with it. We don't have a choice. Life isn't a roller coaster we can jump off of when we get tired, you know? So,
No, but not everyone looks at it that way.
right,
Yeah. I mean, life is is in the trend. The ups and the downs, and you enjoy the ones that when you're on the high, and you deal with when you're in the low. But
right.
uh, it does build on you. I mean,
That's
beats the shit out of you, and it's understandable. Um, as especially as you get older, you wake up every morning, you got a new tweak, something else is
yeah.
bothering you. Like, come on. Um, but yeah, all right. No, it's good, and
And I
and good.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm 12 years out, and over the years, I've had so many long-term side effects just pop up out of nowhere. So first it
Yeah.
was, NASH on my liver, fatty liver from the steroids and gaining 70 pounds in 6 months or 7
Hmm.
months. And then it
Hmm.
was, gastroparesis that they thought was my gallbladder and having to figure that out. Turns out that my vagus nerve was probably damaged from the chemo. And then just last year, I found out I have arthritis in my hip, which we also know is a known side effect.
Arthritis sucks. It really does. I mean, I have my knees. Like a couple of days ago, like not a couple of days, a couple of weeks ago, like I had like the webbing in my hands started hurting out of nowhere. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
And that with the neuropathy, I don't even wanna know how you deal.
Right.
And
And,
living in
and, and
Seoul?
I sound like my mother, especially like when it rains. I start complaining.
Yes.
Robin just looks at me like, "The hell's the matter with you?"
I think you should have a hat that says that you're a barometer, because I feel like I'm a human barometer. Like, I can predict the change in weather, the rain, the cold front, all of it. Like, I can predict it.
Yeah, it's coming. What do you mean? It's the weather.
Oh, my right hip, oh, that's rain. Oh, my left hip, oh, it's gonna get
Man.
but, this is exactly how we have to handle things. Like, yes, we talk about how bad it can suck and how the late side effects suck and how we're living with it, but we also laugh at it, right? Like, humor, I think, is a huge part, and I think humor helps us to deal with the sucky parts. Sometimes it's hard to find that humor, but when we do, it's really healing.
Yeah. It's a good day when you laugh your ass off. It's a good
Especially
day.
since especially since, I'm lucky that I can use my ass again. So, yes, it's definitely a good day.
Something like that. Barbie butt.
I mean, I had an ostomy for a year and a half, so it's like I'm always grateful. Like, when I go, I'm like, "You know what? Thank you," because my surgeon didn't wanna do that surgery, but I pushed them. And it's
What, to
funny.
reverse it?
Yeah, he didn't wanna
Yeah.
reverse it because my tumor was in my descending colon.
Okay.
And I also wanna share again, because I like to emphasize, my tumor was stage 3C and did not show on a scan. So please, everyone, just because you get a scan and it shows nothing does not mean that you can forego that colonoscopy. Wanna
Mm,
state that, very important.
you're giving
So
advice.
yes. Um, so it was in my descending colon. So I'm missing my entire descending colon. So that means that he would have had to attach my transverse directly to my rectum,
Mm.
which we know can cause a lot of issues. And
Hmm.
I did have those issues for 10 years. It took 10 years to kind of get back to a normal. I still can't hold it. It's excruciating to hold it, so I just have to go when I have to go. But you know what? I'm alive and I'm able to live a somewhat pretty much normal life at this point, despite side effects. So I'm grateful. For me, when I had my ostomy, I didn't know anyone else who had an ostomy. I was learning through a lot of trial and a lot of errors and a lot of
Hmm.
blowouts. And it
Hmm.
just was not the way that I wanted to go. And I wasn't coping. And so I was like, if you can't tell me that this has to be permanent, then it's not going to be permanent. Because once again, it was affecting my quality of life and my
Right.
being happy. And that's important.
So, do you know my ostomy joke?
No.
What's the hardest thing about having an ostomy?
What is it?
Finding shoes to match the bag.
That is kinda true, unless you're gonna have poop, like, clear shoes with poop in it or something, I don't
You
know.
know, like I said, if you can find clear shoes with poop in it, then you need to buy them. However, finding shoes to match the bag is difficult. So,
Very
I was actually, so we were actually in the ostomy business. We were in the durable medical equipment business for like 20 years. And I mean, I remember, helping people find like where to buy stuff, like Independence Medical and Invacare and
right.
McKesson and then like Coloplast and Hollister and Comatec Squib and yeah, uh, yeah. I was not ready to become one of my own patients yet, so I did not opt to have everything
Right.
removed. I still have a foot and a half and still fond of it.
I'm glad. So, Hassani, who is my friend, he works at WashU. He's a research coordinator there. He says laughter is the best medicine, and that is absolutely true. My friend Paul wants to know if he's able to share this on other platforms. Paul, this is currently on all other platforms, so you can easily just find Blue Couch Chat or my personal Facebook page or Instagram page and just share it. I'd love for that because he does say that he feels that this is going to help others, and that's exactly why we're doing what we do, right, Dave? Like, you've been at this a lot longer than me, but we share our stories to help others and to let others know that there is hope. You can live through this disease, you can survive it, and even if it's genetic, you can still live a normal life. And I think that's really important for people to know.
Yes.
That's like your shortest answer for the night. I love it.
Drop the mic.
Drop the mic. So I know you don't give advice, but
Okay, here we go.
you are a podcaster and you have your
Yes.
own organization, which has
Yes.
done a lot of amazing work. What would you tell someone like me or other people who want to do the same thing to help others? What's the most important thing that we know when we're looking to start?
Are we talking about starting a foundation, or are we talking about starting a podcast, or are we talking about both?
Both. So
Okay.
you can do, yeah.
Again, my non-advice would be, if there's find the need and fill it. That's the first part. So if you feel like there's a need for something and you're fulfilling it, that's the first part. Because after that, everything else, is everything else will continue in all likelihood to be a
Right,
slog. And the slog is a
right,
clinical term for you have to continue to press and continue to run things as if it was your business. Um, and um, and that's how you have. I'm not saying that's how you have to approach it. That's how we've approached it. Um,
right.
you know, we approached it with very, again, specifically focusing on Lynch syndrome, because at the time when we started the foundation, we did not know of anyone in that space. Even now, since there's
There's
maybe 4 or 5 foundations in the Lynch syndrome space,
right,
and we all talk to each other, and we're all cooperative with each other because we're all in the same boat. We don't have the competitive nonsense that others may face. But that's, again, that's Lynch, and that's, again, there's a need and there's a space for it. From the podcasting side, I continue to. We have not put a ton of money into it, so it's very low cost, very low risk, um, and we generate some okay revenue from it for the foundation. Um, so it works, and that's how we've approached pretty much all of our projects, and things that cost money. We look to recoup and/or make a little bit so we can keep it going. That's how we've approached it, and again, going with advice, that would be my advice: is really not overextend yourself. I've seen folks who will mortgage the house to try and get a foundation up and get out there and spend money to go to conferences that charge too much just to get the word out, and you appreciate it, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. And chances are you're not going to find that one big donor that's going to make the rest of the things move smoothly. You're gonna be talking to everybody and getting a couple of bucks here, there, and maybe a couple of corporate sponsors here and there, and as long as you're comfortable with it and that's what you budgeted, you should be fine. Um, yeah, but then I would also, again, since we're giving advice now, is I say to people who are entering the advocacy space, whatever that advocacy space may be, not just what we're doing, and I say, think in terms of the airplane where the mask drops from the ceiling. Put your mask on first, then you put the mask on others. Um, Having conversations with folks going through a lot of stuff actually can take its toll on you.
right.
And we've gone to conferences, right? You and I, and a number of us, and we see people there, and they're in bad shape for any number of reasons, but typically cancer or whatever health reasons. And then we don't see them again, right? Because they passed, and that takes its toll on you.
It does.
And you need to be, and I would want you to be cognizant of this, that um, we all have bad days. You're going to have bad days. Your guest may have a bad day. Your friend may have a bad day, and some of those bad days can turn into, unfortunately, permanence. And again, you want to be prepared for that. So if it's going to happen, and just sorry. just kind of be prepared for it.
I agree. So I'm gonna wrap this up with you because
Sure.
this has been absolutely amazing, Dave. And I definitely hope to have you on again, maybe with some doctors to discuss Lynch and, new things that are on the horizon at some point. Because I think it's really important that people understand that a Lynch diagnosis is not the end of the world. And a
It
lot
is
of
not.
people feel that way. And I know a lot of people who are scared of having children because they have Lynch. And so I feel like it's really important to bring that awareness out there, like what you're doing. I will continue to point people who, get that diagnosis or that answer, I prefer to call it an answer, right, than a diagnosis. I prefer to call Lynch an answer. So anybody that I find who gets it as their answer, I will definitely continue to point them your way because of the work you're doing and just how crucial it is. You really did find a need and you are filling it. And I see the effects, whether I'm talking to a doctor or whether I'm talking to a fellow survivor. It's huge what you're doing. So I just as your friend, I just want to commend you for that because I know that you started it from your heart and you do it from your heart. And it's not about being Dave of AliveAndKickn. It's you really wanting to help other people. And it's just there's not enough people in this space who are like that. And so it's really good when people like you are doing something and people are able to find you because that's what we as survivors need. We need those people who are really here for us because they're one of us and they get it, and it's really important. And I feel like organizations like yours and, what we consider small organizations are not because your impact is huge. And you're doing it right. And I'm just really, really grateful to have you in this space. And I'm honored that you're my guest tonight and you're on my first episode as well. I truly love you, Dave, and you and your entire family have a special place in my heart. And I'm just grateful for you. And I don't know where I would be if I hadn't met you in Miami. You've really had a huge impact on my life and from then going forward. And I'm glad that I'm able to tell you that and to say thank you. We often don't get that. And I'm really big on the mushiness, as you can tell.
I didn't want to stop you.
I'm very mushy, but no, as a friend and as a fellow advocate, a fellow survivor, you have been very helpful to me. You have been a source of hope, a source of information, a source of important information and inspiration, and just letting me know that there's nothing to be fearful of. And that is a huge thing when you're just diagnosed and you're super young and you don't know anyone. So I'm really glad that you're one of the first people that I met. It is a huge blessing. So I'm gonna take you off screen so I can do my unscripted closing because everything is unscripted here and just real and transparent, just like our conversation here as friends, our chat. I'm so glad that we got to do this. So I'll see you in a few in the blue room.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's an absolute honor, and I hope that we have, more conversations in the future.
Love you back.
Love you. Everyone who is watching, I am really grateful that you tuned in. I hope that I touched even one person and that Dave touched even one person tonight, made you less scared, made you realize that maybe you have a family history you need to talk about or that you need to get genetic testing. I had to urge for genetic testing. Dave was really helpful in helping me to find how to get that done. So you can also reach out to him and his organization. If you do get the answer of Lynch, please make sure you reach out to Dave Dubin and AliveAndKickn. They are a huge source of support, information, and resources that make living with Lynch a lot easier and a lot less lonely. So please reach out to them. In closing, I do want to emphasize please get screened. Please know that this disease can happen to you at any age. As you see, Dave has survived 3 cancers because of his genetic answer. And it's important to follow up with screening as he did because that saved his life. So please, even if you have colon cancer, and I know it's tiring to go through the screenings and all the follow-ups, but please make sure that you're doing your screenings for all other cancers because you can get cancer in other body parts as well. Having one cancer doesn't give you a free pass for others, unfortunately. So please continue your screening. If you're 45 or older, please get your colonoscopy. 45 is the new 50. If you're at any age and you have a family history or any symptoms at all, even if you're a child or your child has just a stomachache that's not going away, or diarrhea, or constipation, or blood in the stool, please go to their pediatrician and please advocate for them. Children cannot advocate for themselves. You need to do it. So please know the symptoms and the warning signs and know how to be their advocate, as well as how to advocate for yourself if you're at risk. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for catching us on the replay. Please like, please comment, please especially share so this can get out there. I created this as a safe place to talk about your shit and all the shit that comes with shitty cancer. And this is unscripted, as I said, so my closing is going to be different every time, and so is my opening, but this is me. This is how I am. And if you need any support or anything, encouragement, Dave is here. So am I. Please reach out to us. We're here for you. You don't have to go through this alone the way we did. I love you. I appreciate you. And please, in the next week until next Friday, please get out and live out loud. I love you. Thank you.